He got down on one knee, right there in front of everyone. My family, his family, our friends, coworkers, strangers. A Valentine's Day proposal, big, loud, cinematic. And then he said something I'll never forget. I wanted to give you the moment you've been begging for, so I could show them all what a liar you really are. I don't remember who gasped first. One might have been me. Might have been my mom. But the sound of my heart snapping in half, that was all mine. My name's Elise. I'm 32. I'm a school counselor from Michigan. I believe in love letters, second chances, and showing up for the people you care about, even when they don't always deserve it. I met Nate during COVID. He was volunteering at the vaccination site, helping direct traffic. I was working the check-in desk. He smiled every time we passed each other. We were both masked, but I swear, I saw the warmth in his eyes from day one. By the end of the second week, he left a sticky note on my windshield. Since you already have my heart, I figured I'd go ahead and give you my number too. Cheesy? Yeah. But after months of loneliness and doom scrolling, I held on to that little yellow square like it was a lifeline. We went out for coffee, then dinner, then weekends turned into toothbrushes left on the sink and grocery lists that started with our. Nate wasn't perfect. No one is. He was sarcastic, sometimes too blunt. Had a weird relationship with his mom, hated talking about money. But he made me laugh. He kissed my forehead when he thought I was asleep. He always brought me tea when I stayed up late lesson planning. And when he whispered, "You make me feel like I'm finally safe," I believed him. After a year, I started bringing up marriage. Nothing intense, just gentle comments like, "When we get a house, when we have kids someday." He'd smile, kiss me. "Home day," he'd say. I want it to be perfect. So I waited, and waited, and waited. His friends started getting engaged. People at work asked when we'd make it official. Every birthday, every anniversary, every holiday I braced for a ring, but it never came. Then, last winter, I found a text on his phone. It was from a woman named Jenna, with a winky face. I'm not the snooping type. But that night, he left his phone on the table and went to shower. The screen lit up. Still thinking about our little stretch session this morning? My stomach dropped. I opened the thread. Flirty messages, compliments, a few too many inside jokes for someone he supposedly just met at the gym. But no full-blown evidence, no pictures, no confessions. Just enough to make me question everything, and not enough to confront him without sounding insecure. So I stayed quiet. I monitored. I paid closer attention to his routines. And I did what any woman taught to be chill would do. I blamed myself. Maybe I've been too busy. Maybe he's just friendly. Maybe I'm overthinking. But the trust? It cracked. I stopped sleeping well. I started checking his locations when he said he was running errands. I'd find myself staring at him at dinner, wondering if the man sitting across from me was still mine, or if he'd already left me emotionally and just hadn't told me yet. I thought about leaving, but then came Valentine's Day. He said, "Wear something nice. I want to do something special this year." I hesitated, but something inside me, that stubborn little voice that still wanted the fairy tale, said, "Maybe he's trying. Maybe this is it. Maybe he's gonna prove me wrong." He took me to the restaurant where we had our first date, the one with the little string lights and live jazz. There was a table full of our friends, my parents, his. Even my boss was there. And then he stood up. He clinked his glass, smiled that charming crooked smile, and pulled out a ring. The whole place went silent. My hands flew to my mouth. I felt tears sting my eyes. And then he said it. "I've been waiting for the perfect moment to give you what you've been begging for, so I could show everyone who you really are." He turned the phone around. On the screen, a message from my old friend Logan, the one Nate never liked. It read, "You still thinking about that night we kissed? I know you're with him, but you deserve more." He said it loud enough for the whole room to hear. Elise here forgot to mention she kissed her just a friend 6 months ago, while she was living in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, and wearing the promise ring I gave her last Christmas. I couldn't breathe. People were whispering. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment. I looked for my mother, her face was frozen. My hands were shaking. I don't even remember standing up. But somehow I walked out. Into the cold. Into silence. Into the deepest humiliation I felt in my life. The first few days after that night felt like I'd been thrown into a black hole. No light, no air, no direction. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from friends, coworkers, even my boss. A couple from Nate's side too, mostly vague. Hey, heard what happened. Just checking in. Wow, girl, that was something. Some didn't even pretend to be kind. You really kissed another guy while wearing his ring? Yikes. I didn't answer any of them. I shut off my phone, closed my blinds, ate cereal from the box, watched reruns of shows I used to love before they reminded me of nights on the couch with him. But once the emotional hangover faded, somewhere between day 5 and 6, I started replaying everything, not just that night, not just Valentine's Day, but the whole relationship. And I started noticing things, small things, things I'd ignored. I used to think I was lucky to have a man like Nate. He was decisive, assertive, knew what he wanted. I called it confidence. But now, I wonder if it was always control. Like the way he'd comment on my clothes. Always with a smile, always wrapped in love. You know you don't need to dress up like that for me. You look good, babe, but you don't have to try so hard. I love you natural. That shirt's a bit tight, huh? At first, I'd take it as a compliment. I thought, he just wants me comfortable. He likes me for me. But slowly, I stopped wearing red lipstick, stopped wearing heels, started dressing softer, smaller, less visible. Then there were the nights out. He never directly told me not to go, but he'd make these comments. Your girls are always single and loud. That's not your vibe anymore. What do you even talk about with them these days? Don't they spend more time taking selfies than actually hanging out? And slowly I started declining invites. Stopped replying in the group chat. I told myself I was just growing out of that phase. That being home with Nate was more meaningful. But now I wonder if I was ever allowed to choose that, or if I was just managed into it. Then there was the money. At first, I thought it was sweet how he always insisted on paying, especially when we moved in together. He said, I've got the rent, just take care of the groceries and little stuff. I like being able to provide. It felt like a gift, like I was cherished. But whenever I'd suggest splitting things differently, or ask about setting joint savings goals, he'd shut down. Well, are you making this complicated? You don't trust me. You want a spreadsheet between us now. So I dropped it. And every month that passed, I felt a little more like a guest in my own home. Even the sweet gestures, the post-it notes, the surprise dinners, the forehead kisses, they all seemed a little performative looking back. Like he was always writing a story in his head and I was the girlfriend character who had to hit the right beats. If I cried too long, he'd say, Okay, drama queen, that's enough. They ask too many questions. You're exhausting sometimes, you know that? And the worst part? I'd apologize. Every single time. When I found that message from Jenna, the yoga girl, I wanted so badly to be wrong. But she called him Nate. She talked about how tight his hips were after their session. She sent a photo of herself in leggings and nothing else. I sat on the couch with that phone in my hand for 20 minutes before he came out of the shower. I didn't confront him. I just handed it to him and said, Tell me what this is. He scrolled, then looked at me like I was the one invading privacy. You're seriously checking my messages now? Are you kidding me? Who is this woman? She's a yoga instructor. It's literally her job to stretch people out. She sent you a half-naked selfie? So now you're going to make something out of nothing? He flipped it. So fast. Suddenly I was insecure. Suddenly I was doing this again. And like a fool, I backed down. Because I didn't have screenshots. because I didn't have receipts, because I didn't want to be that girl, and maybe because, deep down, I'd been taught to believe that being loved meant being forgiving first, asking questions later. I even remember one night, maybe 2 months before Valentine's, when I asked him if he still saw a future with me. Just a gentle, soft kind of question. He looked at me and said, "Why do you always need reassurance? That's not attractive." I nodded, laughed it off, and then cried in the shower with the water running so he wouldn't hear. Now here's the twist. That photo of Logan he showed everyone at the proposal, the one with his arm around me, that was taken before Nate and I ever dated. I'd told him about that kiss months into our relationship, back when we were still in the open, honest honeymoon phase. He laughed, said he appreciated me being real, but apparently he didn't forget. He filed it away, weaponized it. And the text? That message from Logan saying, "You still thinking about that night we kissed?" It wasn't recent. It was from almost a year ago, from when I first started dating Nate, before we were exclusive. I'd never even replied.
But he cropped the message, read it out loud like it had just landed on his phone that morning. He made it sound like I'd been cheating, like I'd been playing him, when really I'd been bending over backwards not to lose him. And that dinner, that entire Valentine's Day scene, it was planned meticulously. The guest list, the restaurant, the camera angle. He'd even brought a Bluetooth speaker to play the same song we danced to on our first date right before he humiliated me in front of everyone. He didn't want answers. He wanted an audience. He wanted to break me publicly so he could rebuild himself privately. But here's what Nate never understood. You don't get to narrate someone else's story just because you were hurt. You don't get to ruin a woman's reputation just because your pride couldn't handle the idea that maybe you never really had her heart. Because while he was building his little courtroom, I was learning, remembering, reclaiming. I thought he embarrassed me. He really did. Was wake me up. He thought he humiliated me. He thought that Valentine's Day stunt, the big public proposal, the perfectly timed call out, the evidence would be the end of me. That I'd run, hide, maybe even apologize for something I didn't do. And I almost did. I almost let him have the last word. For a few days, I was a ghost in my own skin. But then something inside me, something cold, steady, and deeply tired, woke up, not out of rage, not revenge, just clarity. See, while he was out there telling his story, painting himself as the victim of some cold-hearted woman who kissed another man and wore his ring like nothing happened, I started quietly writing mine. But I didn't use words, I used evidence. Because what Nate didn't know is that while he was busy scripting his narrative, he left behind receipts of his own. I pulled our shared phone records first. Jenna, the yoga instructor he swore was just someone he chatted with occasionally about health stuff, had over 480 text messages exchanged with him in the span of 2 months. Many of those messages were deleted from his phone, but not from the cloud. He never thought I'd look, but I did. And what I found was more than flirty emojis. It was dinner plans, I miss your laugh messages, and timestamps that overlapped with nights I thought he was working late. One of those nights was our anniversary. I'd booked a small Airbnb out of town, planned a quiet evening with wine and board games. He canceled last minute, said he had stomach issues, couldn't travel. I ended up watching movies alone, trying not to cry. That same night, Jenna posted a photo on her public Instagram, just a glass of wine on a table, dim lights, and in the reflection of the glass, a blurry outline of Nate's sweatshirt. I cross-checked the pattern on the sleeves. It was his. He told me he spent that night sleeping off food poisoning, but he was drinking red wine with her in a different zip code. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I backed everything up into a folder. Phone records, screenshots, videos she'd posted, a couple of texts she forgot to unsend. I labeled it "when he tries that schlut again." That was just step one. Step two was more personal. I went through our shared Dropbox, the one he used to send me files when we were planning our Asheville trip. Buried among the travel documents were photos I never took selfies. Jenna had clearly snapped while lounging in Nate's apartment, one of them wearing my hoodie, sitting on my side of the couch. He was in the background in one, shirtless, laughing. I didn't flinch. I saved them, printed them, logged the dates. The cloud never lies. And then came the part that felt the most surreal. I scheduled a coffee with his mother. She had always liked me, told me I was too good for her son, but in a way that felt like a compliment. We sat down at a small cafe near the river. I ordered tea. She got black coffee with cream. I slid the manila folder across the table without a word. She opened it, looked through the pages slowly. I watched her face shift. Curiosity, confusion, guilt. He told me you cheated, she said softly. He said you kissed someone else while you were engaged. I nodded. He showed you a cropped message, I said. He didn't show you the part where I never replied, or the part where that text came in a year ago before he and I were even exclusive. She looked stunned. I don't know what to say. I told her she didn't need to say anything. You're not responsible for what he did, I said, but you deserve to know the truth, just in case he ever tries to rewrite it in front of you again. She nodded, tucked the folder into her purse like it was some kind of quiet, sacred burden, and hugged me before we parted ways. Then I contacted the restaurant where he staged the proposal. I pretended to be planning a party, just asked some questions. Turns out he booked the Valentine's package 2 months in advance, December 3rd. Well before he discovered the Logan message, meaning the performance had been in the works long before he pretended to be shocked. He didn't expose me. He orchestrated a takedown. So I did something a little theatrical too. I compiled all the files, uploaded them to a private Google Drive folder. Then I sent that folder with no caption, no explanation to 5 people. My boss, my therapist, and 3 mutual friends who had turned cold after the proposal, just the link, no drama. The title of the folder read, "The Other Side of the Story." I don't know who opened it. I don't know how fast word spread, but within 72 hours, Nate's dramatic Instagram post disappeared. His tagged friends removed their comments. One of our old friends texted me a single line, "I should have asked for your side." I didn't respond to most of them, not because I was being cold, but because I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need everyone to suddenly remember I wasn't the villain. I just needed the truth to exist somewhere quietly, clearly, and without apology. Logan even messaged me, "I just saw the folder. I didn't know it got that bad. You deserved better." I stared at the message, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel shame when I saw his name. I didn't feel anything, really, just relief. I never replied. Because this wasn't about fixing the past. It wasn't even about clearing my name. It was about reclaiming the pin. Because if Nate ever tries to tell this story again, if he ever dares to stand in front of a room full of people and perform it like he did that night, I want him to know there's a version of the story out there with my name on it. And this time it comes with evidence, with timestamps, with everything he forgot to delete. The funny thing about truth is once you have it, really have it in your hands, cold and undeniable, you stop needing to argue. You stop needing to prove. It just lives there with you quietly, like a scar you stop noticing, like a part of your skin. I didn't post the dry folder on social media. I didn't blast it in group chats. I didn't tag anyone. I just let it sit, a soft, permanent line drawn in the sand, not as revenge, but as record. And I think that's what truly scared Nate. Not the exposure, not the loss of control. What scared him was realizing I didn't want anything back from him. Not answers, not closure, not even an apology. After the dust settled, I moved out. Packed slowly, carefully. I took only what was mine, left the ring, left the framed photos, left a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Don't worry, I'll delete the Dropbox." I did, but not before backing it up somewhere he couldn't reach. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was simply done. People say time heals. I think that's a lie. Time doesn't heal. It just makes the pain quieter. It gives you distance. And in that distance, if you're paying attention, you start to see things differently, like how control doesn't always look like yelling. Sometimes it looks like generosity. Like how manipulation doesn't always feel like pressure. Sometimes it feels like protection. Or how love isn't real if it depends on your silence. The proposal, the public ambush, the story he tried to sell, none of that was about me. It was about him trying to stay the main character in a story where he no longer belonged. He couldn't stomach the idea that I had an identity outside of him, that I had a life before him, and worst of all, that I'd have one after. And I do. It's quieter now, smaller, maybe, but real. I got a new place across town, a little 1 bedroom with more light than I need. I bought myself a record player, cook for one, and for the first time in a long time, I sleep all the way through the night without needing to check someone's location or decode the tone in a text message. I even ran into Jenna once. She didn't recognize me. I stood right behind her in line at the bakery. She laughed at something on her phone. It wasn't Nate. Not anymore. Apparently that burned out fast. As for Logan, we never spoke again. I think we both understood that chapter was closed long before Nate ever tried to resurrect it. Some things don't need reopening, just a quiet place to rest. I still get questions sometimes from people who only heard one version. So, did you really cheat? I smile. I say, I made mistakes, but not the ones you think. And I leave it there because I don't need to convince anyone anymore. The truth doesn't always change hearts, but it does change you. It makes you sharper, wiser, quieter in all the right ways. Nate taught me that not every betrayal needs a scream. Some just need silence, a folder full of facts, and the decision to walk away without ever needing to look back. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't a public spectacle. It's healing without permission. It's moving on without explanation. And it's telling the story yourself before someone else gets the ending wrong again. There's a moment in every relationship when the silence says more than the shouting ever could. And sometimes that moment doesn't come during the fight. Sometimes it comes after, when you're sitting alone in a room that used to feel full, when the version of the person you loved is still echoing in your memory, and the version standing in front of you is someone you don't even recognize. Elisa's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the quiet erosion of trust, the kind that doesn't leave bruises, just slowly empties you out until you wake up one day and realize you've been apologizing for things you didn't do, defending yourself against crimes you never committed, and shrinking to fit into a space someone else defined as love. Nate didn't just weaponize her mistakes. He waited, calculated, choreographed her collapse for a standing ovation, and expected her to disappear so he could bask in the sympathy. But she didn't disappear. She didn't fight back with fire. She fought back with facts, with clarity, with silence that said, "You don't get to write my ending." And maybe that's the lesson here. Not every liar yells. Some of them just tell partial truths with perfect timing. Not every abuser hits. Some manipulate you with kindness, control you with compliments, isolate you in the name of love. And not every victim cries. Some build folders, some wait, some walk away and never come back. So now we ask you, those of you still watching, still feeling the weight of this story, what do you think? Was Nate justified in what he did? Was Elise dishonest, or was she punished for a past she was upfront about? Was it wrong for her to stay silent, or was it strength? And here's the real question. Where is the line between accountability and cruelty, between justice and performance? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation like this on either side? Have you ever tried to move on from someone who needed to make you the villain just to feel like the victim? Let's talk about it. Not with anger, not with blame, but with honesty. Because here on Leopard Tales, these stories aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors. And sometimes what we see staring back is something we've lived through ourselves.